Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and we're back with another Ancestry this time from Howl of the Wild, which today we're talking about the awakened animal. Now, YouTube told me that a lot of you are returning to these videos, so I'm not going to give you the normal spiel. We're just going to get right into it today. So, awakened animals are by far probably one of the most versatile heritages, ancestries with its heritages in the game. It is you can do anything with the awakened animal, and it's it's very fascinating. I mean, you look at this picture here. I think this is a bear investigator that looks like a glove in their hand, or that could be a flower, but I think that's a glove that's covered in blood. I don't know. But I like the idea of the bear investigator, so that's what I'm gonna go with. It's They're fascinating. And honestly, probably one of the more well written ones I've found in the book so far. So, talking about the awakened animals in general, they are an animal that, through magic by some means or some, unique phenomena, they have gained a level of sapience above what they normally would have, and now are pretty much a people like anyone else. That's the long and short of it. That's really all you really need to know. I will say that I didn't really like some of the implications of what people think animals are. Animals are way more intelligent than I think we as people give them credit for. Regardless of that, though, I really like how they portray some of the transformation from being a normal animal to an awakened one, as there's just a lot of different things, and it's not all good. Some awakened animals are filled with wonder and curiosity, and others are filled with rage and sadness, as their entire way of life has completely changed and they can never go back. So, that being the case, there's so many different ideas you can have for awakened animals that I really, really enjoy. And similarly, when it came to the society part anyway, they are varied. There's not many awakened animals, though they did hint at a secret city not well known called Rome in Eobaria, which is very interesting, which is the home of awakened animals, which is kind of cool. It left a little mystery, but unlike the Minotaur, they were not overly portrayed as being like virtuous. They could do a lot of things. They could join society, try to fit in, or they could go back to the wild. They even had this very interesting part where sometimes awakened animals go and take control of like large packs of natural animals and control them for good or for ill, as one set was like an awakened wolf that hunts down undead with its massive pack, while another one was like another awakened animal like a bear or something that went in and would stop like caravans and take all their food and stuff out into the wild. Though they did kind of the Paizo just has this thing where they always make ancestries out to be mostly good. So it's more like a Robin Hood scenario where they only took as much as they needed and then they left. But still, at least compared to the Minotaur, they are varied. Whether they're being thieves, whether they're being, guardians, whatever, awakened animals are versatile, and that's it. Now, I could get into the beliefs like I did with the Minotaur, but they really don't tend to have beliefs, and they just kind of do whatever's natural for the environment. So, that being the case, why don't we go ahead and just get straight into what they give you? Now, first of all, they're a rare ancestry. So, this is something you have to confer with your GM. And honestly, this is probably one of the more please confirm with your GM first kind of ancestries I've seen in the game, mostly just because they're so diverse, and that might cause a problem in a campaign. Or because of the nature of awakened animals, they just kind of lean towards goofier ideas because it's silly to see like a bear investigator, for instance. So definitely talk with your GM first before you whip up your awakened animal ancestry. But along with that, the hit points varies based on the size. So if you're playing a teeny ancestry, you have 6 HP, And every size up to large, you can play a large ancestry with this one, increases by 2. So teeny or small is 6, 8, medium is 8, and large is 10, which is insane. And similar with the size, their size truly is between tiny and large. So you can play a wide variety of different play styles because tiny creatures need to be in the space of the creature they're attacking, while large creatures don't innately have reach, but there's a lot of dynamics that change by taking up more space on the battlefield. Their speed is typically base 20, but there are some changes. We'll get into that with the heritages because your heritage determines your speed, which is very interesting. Now, attribute wise, they go with Constitution and Wisdom with one free one with an ability flaw, attribute flaw, and intelligence, which I find the attribute flaw to be strange because the spell is supposed to give them like an average person's intelligence. Though I guess you could just skin this as well, they might be smart. They are not worldly. They didn't grow up with an education system. So there's just a lot of things they don't know, in which case it makes sense. Regardless, it is not bad. And of course, you could always just go with 2 free boosts if you do just want to play a really intelligent animal, like an investigator bear, for instance. So, yeah, not a big deal. Now, looking at what unique features they have awakened form, which essentially just means that no matter what creature you select, you're treated as essentially a humanoid with 2 hands. So no, it doesn't matter if you're playing like an awakened spider or you're playing an awakened snake. You can wield 2 weapons, and that's about it. It's just it's just balancing things, and with how diverse creatures are, and I mean, the fact that you're playing in a fantasy game where animals could be literally anything based on the GM's own homebrew, it's the thing that keeps it the most balanced, more or less. So don't worry, whatever awakened animal you play, you can wear armor, use items, and hold weapons as normal. So you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. Even if you're a snake, you just like hold one in your coil and hold one in your mouth, and you can dual wield if you really want to. The next part, though, I think is more fascinating, which is the awakened mind. Essentially, you can always use diplomacy skills for animals of your kind. So, whatever kind of animal you are, you essentially gain the bespeak of that type of animal, which is pretty cool. And in addition, you can always kind of rely on your instincts and be treated as an animal for the sake of spells and other effects. I don't know what this necessarily entails, but that's really cool. It allows you to essentially be available for certain spells that you couldn't have been before, which I think is very, very interesting. And it makes Awakened Mind, I think, a little treasure trove of unique little interactions you can find in the game. I also want to point out this sidebar about choosing an animal, and mostly just for the fact that it states here many animals have giant sized versions of themselves, so you can play even like a giant, like a large dog or bee. So, more or less, Awakened Animal is more of an aesthetic than it is anything mechanical. Though we are going to get to a mechanical part here in a moment. Play what you want. The rules are all designed for you to kind of play pretty much anything and be any size, do anything you really want to do. Just have fun. That's all that really matters. Just work with your GM and understands that in the end of the day, Pathfinder 2E is a game that is balanced so that everyone gets to have the same amount of fun equally. So if you're playing a bird, be prepared. You're not going to be able to fly right out the gate, which is just, how it's done in Paizo. You can always change it for your home games, true, but, then you have to really work with your GM to ensure that everyone is enjoying the choices that you're making. So, just something I want to make mention of before we get to the heritages here, because the rules for these are quite interesting. And speaking on heritages, if you do select a versatile heritage instead, you just get a base land speed of 20 feet, and you choose one of these heritages to mark the type of animal that you are for the purpose of selecting later feats. So you just, when you do it, you select one of the heritages, and then that is the type of animal you are. You get a land speed of 20 feet, nothing else. And then you can select a versatile heritage as you see fit. And there is even a way that you can select a feat later to pick up some of the features of your animal heritage. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, as far as heritages are concerned, which I find very interesting. But let's go ahead and take a look at the actual heritages themselves. So first up, we have climbing animal. Climbing animal is your any kind of climbing animal. They have chimpanzees, otter. It doesn't matter. Whatever. If you think your animal is a climbing animal, it's a climbing animal. That's kind of the long and short of it. I mean, a snake could be a climbing animal for how good a lot of snakes are at climbing. What this gives you is a 20-foot speed and a climb speed of 20 feet. So you start off with a climb speed, which is pretty cool. Now, both of them are 20 feet. And that's kind of one of the things about awakened animals I find interesting. They're kind of slow for the most part. There is one that is a little bit faster, but they're kind of slow. So be prepared that your character is going to be a little on the slow side, though you might have access to a unique speed. And or a unique movement type, I should say. And in addition, you get to choose one animal attack of your choice, which you always select something that fits your animal. But let's go ahead and take a look at the actual table of attacks here. So the animal attacks here, I like and dislike for a couple of reasons. First of all, as you can see here, all animal attacks have finesse. So no matter what kind of character, no matter what kind of animal you are, you can kind of do any kind of build you see fit, whether it's a dex build or a strength build, as far as how you use your weapons, range weapons, or the like. Now, what I dislike is the homogeny between some of these. Like, for instance, an antler and a beak both do a d6 piercing damage and have finesse and unarmed. And while some of them do have agile, they mostly are all just the same. If they have agile, they're a d4. If they don't, they're a d6. That's it. No other unique traits, no other unique abilities. And that just is kind of lame, if I'm going to be honest. And also just doesn't fit some of the other kinds of, like, Horn does something differently if, for instance, you are like an instinct barbarian, where it's just like it doesn't seem very consistent. Though these are just supposed to replace, because animals don't have a fist typically. So that being the case, though there is fist here, obviously. Though that being the case, they're just supposed to be more or less the same, which I find to be silly, to be honest. But regardless, the fact that you can use any kind of style of play with these is pretty good. So a monk style awakened animal always works no matter what animal you select, which I guess is fine. And I guess your powerful fist just becomes powerful antler or something, even though your damage actually doesn't go up. But regardless, the animal attacks are pretty solid in the fact that they can be used pretty much anywhere, and they're pretty unegregious, even though they have a level of homogeny. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue on with the heritages. Next up, we have flying animal. Now, flying animal, you lose your flight when you become awakened, which is silly. I know a lot of people are not going to like that. It is what it is. That's just how Paizo has decided to balance their game. I don't necessarily disagree, nor do I necessarily agree. I feel like flight is kind of overly stated in its strength, but there are a lot of different types of challenges that flight just completely overcomes. So I can understand the grievances people have with it. So do what's best for your own home game, but there are ways that you can get flight pretty early on, so I wouldn't be too fussed over it. In fact, there's a level 1 feat that gives you a leaping flight kind of deal. Anyway, you get a land speed of 20 feet and one animal attack of your choice, which feels kind of lame compared to climbing animal, because climbing animal gets a climb speed in addition to their animal attack. Though you have to remember, eventually you'll get the ability to fly, and you'll be able to go where the climbing animals will never hope to get to. So that being the case, it's not a super big deal, honestly. So if you want the ability to fly eventually, you might want to consider a flying animal. Next up, we have running animal. Some of the animal choices here are very silly. because running animal are essentially animals that run at great speeds across land. But then they mention like a penguin. I never considered a penguin to be a running animal before, but here we go. Also, kangaroo, which I guess they can be pretty fast, sure. The idea of running kangaroo is a bizarre idea. Anyway, what do they give you? So they give you a 30-foot speed and one animal attack. So these are the faster ones. A 30-foot speed's actually not that bad. You're pretty fast, all things considered. And you gain animal attack. So, honestly, not a lot to complain about. We come to the final heritage here. There's not as many heritages just because they group a bunch of animals into these very simple baskets for the purpose of determining how your character even gets to act. But we have swimming animals. Swimming animals are actually split into two groups. You're either aquatic or water dwelling. Aquatic gives you the aquatic trait and a swim speed of 30 feet, though you don't have a land speed. Or do you? I guess you don't technically, which is very interesting. So yeah, you have just a swim speed of 30 feet. You gain the aquatic trait, which means you can breathe in water but not air. And your bludgeoning and slashing unarmed strikes underwater don't take the -2 penalty to your strikes, which is good if you're playing in a aquatic campaign. Water dwelling's a little bit better. You have the ability to hold your breath for 10 minutes with before you need to breathe, and you have a swim speed of 20 feet and a land speed of 20 feet. So overall, I mean, water dwelling is gonna work in more games than aquatic, but there are aquatic aids for those who need aquatic situations. So there are ways that even an aquatic animal can participate in other kinds of adventures. So don't feel like you can't select something like a dolphin, even though technically I guess dolphins are, I said dolphin and now that's interesting because dolphins are not aquatic, but they don't have a land speed. I don't like that. It's weird. They're doing their best, but swimming animals are definitely going to be very specific to the kind of campaign you want to play. Water dwelling, I feel, is at least less egregious. So, you know. But yeah, that's the heritages. So I know I spent a lot of time kind of like with the preamble of setting an animal up. There's just a lot that goes into selecting an awakened animal in the first place. But let's go ahead and talk about the feats. And actually, before we get to the feats, if you would be so kind, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. This allows you to see all the wonderful Howl of the Wild content that's coming out. Plus, I'll be looking into what's coming out from PaizoCon later this month and all kinds of the crazy books coming out this year. So if you don't want to miss anything Pathfinder 2e related, I would definitely subscribe and leave a like. It increases the chance that other people get to see this content, which lets other people know about the wonderful and awesome options that are coming out in a book that you're not going to be able to see until the 22nd. So that helped me out a lot, but then also help out a lot of other people as well. But let's go ahead and get to the feat, shall we? So first off, we have Awakened Animal Lore. This is the same as most lore feats. And this one, though, you become trained in Arcana and Nature. And you also get the additional lore general feat for Awakened Animal Lore. Not bad, and definitely not terrible. It's interesting, and honestly, it's interesting that it's not like a Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Divine, because I imagine that there could be other ways for an animal to awaken. A god giving an animal like sentience could definitely be a thing. So it's very strange that they chose those two. I guess those are just the most common versions, though. So I guess it makes sense. But yeah, other than that, it's just a general feat. Awakened Animal lore also just is not super great. Awakened animals are super rare in the first place. So of the like Ancestry lore feats, it's probably one of the ones that I would select the least often. It just doesn't seem as handy. Next up, though, is Awakened Magic, and Awakened Magic actually is pretty good. So essentially, you just choose one cantrip from the primal list, and you can cast that as a spell. Pretty much, it's just easy. It's just a free cantrip from the primal list. There's so many really good primal cantrips that you can utilize offensively or like utility wise, that I feel like this is a pretty solid one to pick up. Fascinated by Society is a really fun one, and it's the interesting juxtaposition between the awakened animal and the normal humanoid, because many humanoids, like people like me and you, we are fascinated by nature sometimes. A lot of us like to go into like marine biology, studying animals, studying the wild. It's just something that's beyond our normal level of society. Well, for awakened animals, the inverse is true. They come from the wilds and they become super fascinated with society and urban structures and the like. So with this particular feat, you become trained in society, and whenever you fail a recall knowledge check about something that is society based, when you fail but don't crit fail, you do learn the correct information, and you learn also additional erroneous information, and you don't know which is which. Essentially, you get the I think is dubious lore, or the dubious knowledge feat. I can't remember which one it's called, but essentially, whenever you fail but don't crit fail, you learn one correct thing and one wrong thing at the same time, and you don't know which is which is fascinating. It makes it really fun. You get trained in society with this, and it's definitely interesting. Also, they also mention with recall knowledge or decipher writing, which I find the decipher writing part to be even funnier. Like you read a sign, it's like, ah, yes, I know what apples are. Apples are a type of like orangey fruit, right? Like you got it right. It's a fruit, but it's not an orange fruit. That kind of thing. It's really, really funny. I thoroughly enjoy this kind of take on the awakened animal. Next up, we have a really good feat for our swimming animal heritage friends. Now, if you're an aquatic swimming animal, you gain the a 20-foot land speed, and you can breathe air for 10 minutes. So, yeah, that is a good way to make a lot of aquatic animals work a little bit better on land. You also gain a land speed, which, again, I really don't like the idea of the dolphin just walking on his fins like feet. Yeah, I guess I could hop around. I mean, I guess there's a kangaroo. I don't know. It's really weird. But if you do want to play an aquatic animal in more types of campaigns, land legs is definitely a feat you probably should consider taking. Learn by watching really emphasizes the awakened animal's level of curiosity they might have. So you become trained in your choice of either crafting, medicine, or performance. And in addition, whenever you follow the expert in exploration mode, you add 2 plus your level as your proficiency bonus if you're untrained, instead of adding your level alone. So yeah, it's you are just a little bit better at untrained improvisation, I guess, when you're following the expert, which is pretty cool. I mean, you don't get untrained improvisation, blah, blah, blah. I don't like that word. But when you're following the expert, you're just a bit better at it than other people, which I think is kind of fun. Natural senses is a particularly good feat. It gives you a sense appropriate for the animal that you have. You either gain dark vision, you gain an echolocation of 10 feet, low light vision, you gain an imprecise sense, yeah, 30 feet, or tremor sense, which is imprecise, of 30 feet. If the animal you're playing doesn't have any particular senses, you just can't select this feat. So the type of animal you choose does in fact matter, and you actually can take this feat multiple times if the animal you have would have multiple of these. So that being the case, natural senses is really good to get some extra perception stuff. The echolocation probably being one of the stronger ones, being a precise sense, even though it's only a range of 10 feet. Dark vision also, I guess, is just really good in general. Dark vision does come in handy a lot. So yeah, if you want better visions or better ways to detect enemies, natural senses might be for you. Sea legs is really interesting because there's a lot of animals that are land dwelling, like iguanas, for instance, that do actually spend a lot of time in the water. So with this one, kind of the inverse of land legs, if you don't already have a swim speed, you get a swim speed of 10 feet, and you can breathe underwater for 5 minutes, which is interesting. It's breathe underwater. I don't know why it has to be breathe underwater for 5 minutes, but I guess it allows you to do things like incantate spells or whatever. So I guess it's handy. And honestly, sea legs, I think, is the preferred for me. I'd rather select a different animal heritage and go sea legs than be aquatic or even water dwelling. Though if you're playing in a game that has a lot of water, then obviously your choice might change. But Sea Legs feels like a really good one if you do want to do water stuff for the other animal heritages anyway. And hey, so for our flying friends of the flying animal heritage, we have Take Flight. So once per round as a singular action, you can fly. Now, this isn't normal flight, as if you don't normally have a fly speed, you gain a fly speed of 15 feet for this movement. If you aren't on solid ground at the end of this movement, you fall. Oh, I also forgot. I totally didn't mention. Flying animals also never suffer from fall damage. So, yeah, you can fall as far as you want as a flying animal at the very least and never take fall damage. So, you never need to select the catfall feat or many feats, in fact, that deal with falling specifically. I can't believe I missed that when I was talking about it. But yeah, so for at least for this one, if you want to fly a little bit, there's no repercussions. You fly for 15 feet out and then you just fall, or I guess glide technically down to the ground, which can be good in a lot of situations, but this isn't true flight. This is just a feat that will get us to true flight later. So that being the case, if you want to fly, you have to take this. If you don't care, then it doesn't matter. And of course, only the flying animal heritage can select this one. Tooth and Claw is probably one of the worst feats here. It's okay, I guess. I don't know. I don't see the reason for it. Tooth and Claw gives you another weapon, another one of the animal weapons that we were talking about earlier, which means you're either selecting the agile version of the animal weapons or unarmed strikes, or you're selecting the D6 finesse version. I guess if you want to do different damage types with your unarmed strikes, you can do so. But I really don't see much reason because most of their attacks are, like I said, pretty bland and kind of boring. And the final level 1 feat here is You're So Cute. It's absolutely wonderful. It's essentially you use your innate animal cuteness, whether you're a dog or a cat. This is a very Puss in Boots kind of feat. You become trained in performance and you gain the impressive performance feat. And when you use performance to make an impression, you get a +1 circumstance bonus. So people just like you because you're just so adorable and cute, and you can use performance for this. So Bard Awakened animals are going to absolutely love this. Many of the level 1 feats were relatively tame, but the level 5 feats I think get way more interesting. We start off here with Fierce Grasp. Fierce Grasp, you do need to be a climbing animal heritage to use, and in order to use this action, you must have an opponent grab or currently restrains. Once you get your hands on someone, it's hard for them to get away from you. Your opponent takes a -2 circumstance penalty to their next escape attempt from being grabbed or restrained by you. And you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC against attacks they make against you while they are grabbed. Is this a good action? I don't know. I genuinely do think it would come up kind of often, though. There's many times where a player is grabbing an enemy, and because escape checks are against DCs rather than like the player getting to roll, for instance, they are. It's a situation where if you really don't want the enemy to get away, reducing their check by -2 is kind of substantial. And not only that, but getting a +1 circumstance bonus to your AC against creatures that you're currently grabbing is genuinely a pretty good thing. So that being concerned, if you're playing a bully build or any kind of like swashbuckler grapple build, for instance, Fierce Grasp I think is a really solid choice. Earlier, I did mention that you could go back to the heritages if you had selected a versatile heritage, and a Late Awakener is essentially that. So Late Awakener essentially allows you to claim the rest of the benefits that your particular animal heritage had left you with. This pretty much just allows you to select the feats from that line as well. So that being the case, Late Awakener is really good if there is a feat that you want to select from this later, but it kind of feels like a bridge feat in the sense that it doesn't do anything. I mean, obviously you gain the mechanical benefits. So if you're a climbing animal, for instance, you would now gain a climb speed, which isn't bad for sure. But if you're a flying animal, then you just get the well, I guess you never take fall damage, which I guess is okay too. I don't know. Late Awakener is something that you have to really either want the initial heritage bonus, which some of them are pretty good, or you want to select another feat later on that requires one of the unique heritages. So, you know, select it as you want. I think that a lot of the base heritages do offer some really good like movement type things, which is very handy. So it's honestly not a bad ancestry feat to pick up. Next up is Natural Ambassador. Now, this is a strange one because it has a prerequisite of Awakened Mind. Now, from my understanding, the general feat Adopted Ancestry only allows you to select common ancestries. So no one that's not already an awakened animal is going to have access to Awakened Mind, but in any regard, that is the prerequisite. Anyway, so this allows you to pretty much speak to any animals. You can ask questions of, receive answers from, and use diplomacy skill with all animals, not just those of your kind. You also get a +1 circumstance bonus to your diplomacy checks when you do, or the bonus increases the +2 of their animals of your kind. So this is a really good feat if you really like asking animals questions. You can kind of Doctor Doolittle up with your game, which I think is kind of fun. And because you were an animal before, it has those interesting dynamics, which is some like, for instance, if you're a cat talking to birds, they might be way more sussy of you, or if you're a cat talking to a dog, conversely, they might look down on you a little bit. In any regard, I think Natural Ambassador is a lot of fun just mechanically, but also for the narrative plays that you can do. Scurry is a really good one. It's a free action that you can only take if you're a tiny size, and it's when you roll initiative. So when you roll initiative, you stride. You must end your movement in a location where you have cover from at least one enemy. And if you have a different type of movement, like flight, swimming, or whatever, you can use that corresponding movement as well. Now, if you cannot actually gain cover from an enemy, you can't take this action when combat starts. I like Scurry a lot. This is a really good way for if you're playing a rogue, for instance, to instantly hop into cover. So that being the case, Scurry's actually a pretty like insanely good feat, especially if you're playing some kind of class, or if you just in general a class that hides or a character that hides to get a really good shot off at the beginning. Like Gunslinger can also make great use of this. So I actually thoroughly enjoy this one. Strong of Wing is the next step up from Take Flight, and it increases your fly speed to 25 feet. You still can't just fly, but you can now leap essentially further. So, you know, the number of hoops you have to jump through for fly speed in this is kind of lame, and this will be a 3 feet line to get true flight, essentially, where a lot of other ancestries only have to do 2. It's a little silly. I do think you get full flight a little bit earlier than other ancestries, though, so I guess it's worth it. It does feel just kind of egregious. I would take out this feat altogether and just make the next feat make your fly speed higher plus give you true flight. But in any regard, it's balanced this way, so having a leaping ability of 25 feet is potentially good, even though flying up is considered difficult terrain. So, I don't know. Take it if you like flying, I suppose. You have to if you want to get true flight anyway. Next up, we have Urban Jungle. This is the next feat up from Fascinated by Society. Now, you do need to be an expert in society or survival. This one's really, really fun. So essentially, you treat cities as essentially a wilderness. When you're in an urban area, you can move your full speed while you're tracking, and you can use your choice of survival or society to track, which is kind of fun. I love the idea of using society to track, going and being like, all right, so the guy we're chasing off, he would definitely take one of these newspapers and he would probably go to like the trolley just around the corner. So let's go and talk to the trolley guy. Maybe he knows or he's seen our target. I absolutely love Urban Jungle. I like, again, I really like this juxtaposition of the awakened animal coming into society and being equally as fascinated as people can be with nature. It's just a lot of fun. Wild Stride. Now, this is an interesting one. Now, this requires that you have a free hand or paw or whatever. And essentially, you spend 2 actions and you stride twice, and you gain a +5 circumstance bonus to the speed for these strides. Now, if you have nothing in your hands, you get a 10-foot movement speed bonus instead. I don't know. I mean, there are many other types of feats, initiation feats, where you get to stride twice and then do something for 2 actions. This one just makes striding twice slightly faster. There's like even like a spell or a cantrip I think that does something similar to this. So I really don't like Wild Stride. It just doesn't feel like it offers enough. But if you are playing like a monk, for instance, and you need to stride twice for whatever reason, then Wild Stride it is technically just always going to be better, especially because it's circumstance bonus rather than status, which monk typically gets from their various like stances. So Wild Strike can be good. It also isn't bad if you're like a one-hand weapon user, like swashbucklers tend to be, or even investigators. I don't know. I just feel like there's other feats that kind of do the same thing better. So Wild Stride is interesting at the very least. And if you have nothing in your hands, it is one of the faster speed boosts you can get in the game. All right, now we're up to level 9. There's only 2 feats in this one. We have Animal Summoner. You need to have Awakened Magic, which gave you the Primal Cantrip. Now you get the Summon Animal Primal Innate spell once per day, and it's heightened up to half your level rounded up. So a pretty good one. Now, a lot of people do like to complain about these summoned animals, which is kind of understandable. There's not a lot that are super good in combat in a lot of situations. But I mean, heck, it's just a free heightened summon animal spell. And the fact that this spell just heightens automatically is actually pretty good. As many of the times you get these kind of spells, you get them at like 4th rank casting, and then it stays at that rank forever. So Animal Summoner is technically better than a lot of those kinds of spells. So actually, I think it's a pretty good feat. At level 9, we get Full Flight. Finally, our flying friends can just fly all the time now. Pretty cool. So yeah, you have a fly speed of 25 feet at all times. Now, what I don't like about Full Flight is, again, this is now the 3rd feat we've had to select in order to get this, and this one just makes the other 2 feats completely unnecessary. You don't even become faster. You just get the same 25 feet speed you got in the last feat, only now you just fly forever, which, like, I just don't like feats that just make the prior feats not work anymore. So yeah, 3 feats to get a fly speed of 25 feet. Woo. I mean, flight is strong. I understand. I admit. I just feel like 3 feats is a little too much, even though you do get this way earlier than a lot of other classes or characters tend to. Still, I just that's the cost of getting it early, is you have to select 3 feats in a row to get it, which, it's up to you whether you think that's worth it or not. All right, at 13th level, we get an interesting one. Now, this is an uncommon feat, so you need to find access to this. And you also need to be a master in nature, and this is the Awaken Others. So you learn the Awaken Animal ritual. So you don't even need to find access to Awaken Animal to use this one. You just learn it. So the reason why it's uncommon is your GM needs to be okay with you being able to awaken other animals, which, can cause problems, so it's understandable. Now, you use your own nature as a part of the ritual, so it costs 1/10 or about 10% the value of the creature creation rituals instead of 1/5, which is, twice as good, which is good. And if you would get a critical failure on your check, you instead get just a normal failure. So this just makes you good at awakening other animals. Whether your GM lets you have this ability or not is up to them. But at the very least, I think that there is some interesting potential in this one. The Digger feat. Now, this one I actually really, really like. Getting a burrow speed is somewhat difficult in the game, actually. So you do need to be either a running or climbing heritage, which is pretty interesting. And this gives you a burrow speed of 15 feet. Plain, simple, easy to use, and it's just a singular feat. You don't even have to go down a feat line to get this. I like this one. I think just getting a burrow speed is pretty good, even though it's, level 13. It's still, a lot of people will probably see this get some use. So I think Digger is a pretty solid feat. Next up, we have Sharpen Senses. Now, this is a free action, and it doesn't actually require the enhanced or awakened senses from before, which is pretty interesting. Once per round, you can seek as a free action, and if you use one of your senses from natural senses, you get a +2 circumstance bonus to this check. This is good in some situations. There are lots of sneaky enemies that tend to hide. So if you do have natural senses, you just get an improved ability to do so. So this is definitely a good feat to take if you already have natural senses. But even if you don't, a free action seek is really good. Seeking is always one of those feel bad kind of things where it feels like you don't get to do anything with that action, and then your turn just feels like, oh, well, now I can actually see the enemy. Now I have 2 actions to do something about it. This removes that kind of problem, which I think is definitely worth it. So sharpened senses is pretty cool. All right, now we're on to the level 17 feats. We're here at the end of the video, another long one, but that's just how these videos tend to be. And there's actually 3 feats here rather than what most Ancestries get, which is only 2. So Awakened Stride. Now, this does have the prerequisite of Wild Stride, and it does make Wild Stride actually a lot better. So now for those 2 actions of an enhanced speed, you can actually stride 3 times. And during these strides, you are concealed during the movement. So if you do proc any reactions, like reactive strike, for instance, you are at least concealed to the strikes, which is pretty interesting. Now, again, this kind of just runs into the same problem of it's cool, you get to move faster, and technically you get to move way faster because you get to stride 3 strides for 2 actions, which gives you some good action efficiency. And then technically, this means you can stride 4 times in a round at an enhanced movement speed. How often this is going to come up, I don't know. This is good in chase scenes. That's the big thing. Though it's at level 17, which I feel is a little too high. I think Awakened Stride probably could have been done at level 13, and we could have just had 2 feats at level 17 like every other Ancestry does. So, yeah, this one feels like okay, but it's a little late in the game. A lot of people just won't get to see this, and I don't feel like they'll get the ability to really utilize it. So Awakened Stride is okay. It is good in the sense that you get your character just really fast now, all things considering. And with how fast some characters can even get in this game, with some magic items included, yeah, you could be insanely fast, like a speedster level fast with Awakened Stride. I just don't see how often this will come in handy, and it just feels a little late for my tastes. Next up, we have Fearsome Forms. So you can cast Mask of Terror as an innate primal spell once per day. You only get to target yourself, though, and you always appear as a more monstrous version of yourself. And honestly, I'm surprised that it doesn't have a prerequisite of awakened magic. So yeah, but essentially, you just are tuning into your more innate primal self and making yourself looking really imposing. So I like it. I mean, I always like any kind of feats that give you access to spells like once per day, every day, as it's just a free spell that you get to use. And this one, the spell DC isn't necessarily going to be such a huge deal. So Fearsome Form is pretty okay. And at level 17, the final feat for the book, we have True Senses. It's 2 actions, and it has a prerequisite of natural senses, that one that gave us a unique sense, and we can only use this once per day. But you can heighten your senses to non-magically gain the effects of True Sight of the 6th rank version for 10 minutes. The ability to see through illusions and polymorph effects applies to your precise sense you possess, to any precise sense you possess. So yeah, True Sense is very interesting. I like the fact that it specifically states non-magically, so nothing can prevent you from essentially getting True Sight. Not a thing at all. It's very interesting. And it says here specifically, you gain the effects of 6th rank True Sight. So you don't actually cast the spell. So you don't incantate, you don't do anything weird. It's just once per day. I'm surprised this actually doesn't have the concentrate trait, because that would make more sense. But essentially, you just do it. So no one knows you're doing this. And like the big bag doesn't know you're doing this. You just get True Sight and you have it for 10 minutes. I think this is really good. I think this is pretty insane. It's a really good ability, very solid, and really makes sense for level 17. You've perfected yourself to such a point that you are capable of just tuning in and being aware that something is not right, really tuning into your animal senses. So I think this is really good. And yeah, that's going to be the awakened animal. I like this ancestry a lot. It is incredibly diverse, very versatile. It's probably the most versatile like ancestry in Pathfinder 2nd edition up until this point. You can be any size, you can have any starting health, you can get a lot of different movement types. You even get access to a little bit of magic, and you can do some tracking. You get lots of skill training proficiencies. Like the only thing they don't get that every other ancestry does is weapon familiarity, which, honestly is probably not a thing you're going to worry about, especially because you already come with an innate natural weapon anyway. So, yeah, I think this is a good one. If y'all think as well, let me know down in the comments what kind of crazy kooky awakened animal idea you might have for a character. I'm sure many of you will share this kind of thing already. I think this is probably just the funnest archetype, or the funnest ancestry in Pathfinder 2nd edition to date. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. And have a great time with your awakened animals. Bye.